All right, everyone, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started here tonight. Talk a little bit about the Food Webs project. Um, Before we do that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the lesson and the objectives of both the lesson and the project, so that I can give you some pointers about what you should be doing for this. But the big hitters of this lesson is being able to understand and identify environmental factors that have effects on habitats and communities, recognize food chains and food web roles, being able to trace energy flow through ecosystems and define the balance of an ecosystem, and then identify ways which ecosystems fall out of balance and ways that balance can be restored. So let's take a few minutes. Let's talk about some of the high points here of the lesson as it relates to the project. So, really, the goal here is to have you understand that ecology deals with many, many complex relationships among organisms in the environment. So, when you study relationships that talk about how environmental changes affect ecosystems, you need to look at it really at both a micro and a macro level, in that ecosystems are viewed as habitats and communities that interact with the environment. Okay, so it's a mutual and a mutual interaction. Um, so with that, plants and animals depend upon the building blocks of the environment that you may not even think about. So factors such as light and temperature, water, air, minerals, the elevation of the landscape, the features of the landscape, the different growing seasons that occur, all are factors that are really important in determining whether or not habitats are successful or whether they're not successful. Um, so with that, um, you need to really understand that food chains and food webs, those that exist naturally in nature, really are the basic building blocks of an ecosystem. And that flow of energy from the sun, which is the ultimate energy source for our planet, all the way down from primary producers, your plants, to primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers, is important in order to keep a balance in ecosystems. Okay, so when you look at that from the perspective of our planet, the number of producers in ecosystems should be far greater than the number of consumers that exist. Okay, so producers outnumber primary consumers. Primary consumers outnumber secondary consumers outnumber tertiary consumers. So, despite there being a real complex community, no one species or plant and animal can be out of balance, or should be out of balance, um, because it could create issues. So, think of the ecosystem, think of our planet and our environment really as a seesaw. Okay, and when the seesaw is level, there's a balance. There's a homeostatic mechanism in the environment, and when one side is up or one side is down, you really, you'll see, an upset in living things. So, with that, let's move on and let's take a minute here and talk about the project. Okay, so the project really focuses mostly on food chains and food webs. Okay, a food chain essentially is a representation of the flow of energy in an ecosystem. Okay, and most energy, in fact, all of our energy begins with the sun. Okay, so all food chains begin with a specific primary producer, which uses sunlight to make food through the process of photosynthesis. Okay, consumers obtain their energy by eating producers and other consumers. Okay, so as it goes, primary consumers are typically your herbivorous organisms, those that only eat plants. Your secondary consumers typically feed on primary consumers. Okay, while tertiary consumers then feed on secondary consumers, and in some instances feed on everything below it in food chains. Okay, um, in nature, though, when you look at it from a large scale macro ecological view, linear food chains very rarely exist. Why? Because they're not practical. Okay, most consumers in ecosystems eat a variety of living things because they have to. Okay, they have to be able to survive. So a group of interconnected food chains essentially is what we call a food web. So in this project, you're going to construct a food web to help you answer the questions. Okay, and you can make your food web however you'd like. It says a poster board and colored pencils or markers. You don't need to do it on a poster board. You can do it something as simple as a pencil or a paper, or you can even do it online. I will post a food web maker link on this under this video. You can screen capture it and you can send it to me that way too. Okay, so you don't really need any materials for this project if you don't have them. Okay, so the goal here is imagine an ecosystem with the following population. So here it gives you all of these consumers. If you choose to do the online version of it, it will give you one similar to this that you can use. So you're not limited to this, but this is just a good starting point. Okay, you're going to draw a food web that represents the flow of energy between ecosystems. Okay, you're going to try and include all of these individuals in this project. And then you're, like I said, you're either going to take a screen capture of this, whatever you do, if you do it on a paper or a pencil or a poster board, or you'll take a screen capture of the link that you use online to create one. Okay, and then once you've created that, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of how food webs work. Remember, they're a relationship, and if you're not familiar with them, I encourage you to go back into the lesson and look and see how to build a food web. Okay, from there, the following questions you'll answer. So if an ecosystem is balanced, if that seesaw is balanced, what population would be the largest and what population would be the smallest? Okay, so again, start thinking about the relationship between primary producers and tertiary consumers. Suppose that a group of hunters kills half of a rabbit population. What other organism would be affected? Okay, think about how secondary consumers affect food chains and food webs, and those organisms above them, how they would be affected. Okay. Again, imagine a disease kills 85% of the wolf population. Okay, how would this affect their other organisms? Okay, so you got to remember that wolf populations, they're tertiary consumers. Think about how that would affect those organisms below it on the food chain or the food web. Okay, imagine if you introduced a foreign species, how would this affect the other organisms? So think about this from a competition perspective. Okay, so that's what you're going to be thinking of for this. So you can write these answers again on here, or you can attach it certainly as a Word document. I'm comfortable with either one. And if you have any other questions, I'll be more than happy to help you in the VO this week. And next week we'll be back here wrapping up our last little instructional video for the year on biomes and how all of the biome projects relate to this ecosystem. So have a great week, everyone.